The sound hits first, a hard, hollow thud on the stair runner, the kind that makes a house hold its breath. I'm at the kitchen sink rinsing Eli's lunchbox when I hear it again. Wheels scraping wood, a zipper biting fabric, my son's breath coming too fast. I dry my hands on a dish towel that still smells faintly of lemon and step into the hall. Craig barrels down like a man late for his life, not looking at the family pictures he used to straighten with 2 fingers. There's a suitcase swinging at his side, the cheap kind with a shiny handle and scuffed corners. He's talking before he reaches the bottom step. Work thing. Jacksonville. Temporary. The lies line up in a row like bad soldiers. He won't meet my eyes. I've seen this look on him before, in high school, when he wrecked the Buick and said the mailbox. Jumped? In college when tuition money disappeared into a poker game. It's a muscle memory on his face. Flight, not fight. He's 36 and still running downhill. How long? I asked. The old radiator ticks in the entryway like it's counting with me. Couple weeks. His mouth twitches. The suitcase thumps the floor, and he keeps packing the space around the lie with words. It's a contract. Good money. I'll send some back. Some. The word lands in my gut like a stone. There was a time he'd say, I've got you, Dad. Now it's some, like generosity tossed over his shoulder. Eli appears in the doorway to the den, all elbows and watchful eyes, his math book hugged to his chest. He's 12, but carries himself like news he hasn't decided how to deliver. You going far? He asks, voice careful. Craig glances at him, and then away. Just a bit. Grandma. He stops, corrects himself like the word snagged him. Dad's got you. I step closer, close enough to smell the bite of aftershave he puts on when he wants to seem respectable. Where's the money, Craig? My voice comes out low, the way I used to speak in the shop when I was teaching apprentices how not to lose a finger. Calm, so they'd listen. He flinches like I swung at him. What money? The money your mother and I saved. The cushion. The college fund. I watch his pupils pin, a quick calculation he can't finish in time. This isn't about money, he says, which is how you know it is. Eli's eyes move from me to Craig and back, the way a chess player tracks a board. I feel a steadying hand in the small of my back that isn't there, my wife's old habit, the ghost of it. I want to ask 100 questions, to demand keys and cards and the truth, but I know if I push now he'll be gone before the front door swings shut. Craig, I say, and the years crowd the name. Look at me. He does, finally. For a heartbeat, I see the boy who used to climb into my truck with jelly on his fingers and stories about dinosaurs. Then the door inside him closes. He lifts the handle, shoulders the suitcase, and the promise he doesn't make is louder than anything he could say. I'll call, he mutters. Call who? I ask, but he's already halfway out, October air slipping around him like permission. The latch clicks. The house exhales. Upstairs, a floorboard creaks. Eli stands very still, and I understand in a way that makes my chest ache. We're about to be left holding the pieces, and the hands doing the holding will be smaller than mine. The login page stares back with the same polite boxes it has every month for years, as if the right combination of letters could still unlock a world where things made sense. I put on my glasses, the ones with a scratch on the left lens from a weekend project I never finished, and type slow to keep my hands from showing me what I already know. The cursor spins. The kitchen clock ticks. Somewhere outside a dog barks at nothing and gets it right. The dashboard blooms into existence, and the numbers hit like a punch to the sternum. Checking, $312. Savings, $84. Investment account. Balance unavailable. Contact institution. I click the savings again, because habit tells me sometimes a site just needs a second try, like an old engine coaxed with a choke. It doesn't change. I open the graph and watch the line that used to climb steady as a trellis drop off a cliff 2 weeks ago, stepping down in neat, deliberate chunks until it's standing ankle-deep in the mud. $250,000. I say it in my head the way my wife and I used to say it at the kitchen table, not as a boast but as a promise. Years of double shifts, of fixing neighbors' mowers for cash, of her clipping coupons in a robe that smelled like lavender, of us putting off vacations because next year we can go longer. That number was a life we were building, Now it's a tombstone. I try the broker account. Security questions I haven't seen in a decade pop up like strangers at the door. First car? First dog? I answer them and land on a page that might as well be a crime scene photo. The last transfer out is labeled TR5T. A tidy string of digits I don't recognize receives what we never intended to give. There are notes, clipped and smug. Bridge loan, temporary reallocation. I taste metal in my mouth. The mud rattles against the wood when I set it down. My fingers aren't listening to me. I rub the heel of my hand against my chest where the shock sits like a bruise and try to breathe through it. This isn't a mistake. It isn't a bank error, a clerical fluke, a cursor slipped one account over. It's a hand in my pocket, and that hand has my son's knuckles. A notification pops up. New email from the bank about unusual activity. The subject might as well read you weren't watching. I open it anyway. We attempted to reach you regarding outgoing wire transfers exceeding standard thresholds. There's a phone number. There's a timestamp from yesterday, when I was in the garage sorting boxes of my wife's quilting fabric, telling myself I'd get them to the church sale this weekend. Eli's footsteps are quiet on the stairs. He doesn't come in right away, just hovers within the soft light at the doorway, like he can tell the room's changed shape. Grandpa? Numbers don't lie, my wife used to say when she balanced the books with a pencil that had bite marks on it. People do. I nod once, because if I speak I might crack. It's gone, I manage. He moves closer, eyes flicking to the screen. I expect panic. What I get is focus, a narrowing of the world to entries and dates, a boy shouldering a weight that was mine to carry. Okay, he says, steady as a metronome. Show me. He doesn't flinch at the numbers. He stands beside me, close enough that I can feel his warmth through the sleeve of my work shirt, and takes in the screen the way you take in bad weather. You note direction and speed before you decide whether to run. Can I see the statements? He asks, not a tremor in it. 12 years old, and he sounds like someone calling the next move in a workshop, calm and practical. I want to say no. I want to fold the laptop shut and herd him towards something easy. Cereal, a cartoon from when TV still looked like a toy. My hand even reaches for the lid, but he places 2 fingers on the corner, light as a moth, and waits. There's no pleading in him, no theatrics. Just a stillness that feels older than both of us. Please, he says. It'll be easier if I see it. I type the navigation like I'm confessing. The PDF opens with its sterile columns, and the bank's tidy logo in the top left, the one my wife used to jokingly call our other family crest. Eli leans in. Scroll, he murmurs, as if we're looking at a map and not the autopsy of our savings. He points, not stabbing, just marking. There. And there. His fingertip hovers over dates I've been refusing to see. The withdrawals aren't a landslide. They're steps built with care. 5,000. 10. A sequence that pretends to be benign. Do you know who it went to? He asks. There's a beneficiary code, like a license plate I don't recognize. TR5T, I read. He nods once, filing it away. We can trace that. We. The word lands gentle and heavy at the same time. It should shame me, a child stepping into a fight he didn't pick, but what it does is steady my hands. I scroll submit, open another tab. Eli watches the way my apprentices used to watch a lathe, alert, respectful, already imagining how it could bite. He doesn't crowd. He doesn't tell me what to do. He waits for the page to load, then says, Can I drive? And I realize he means the trackpad. I let go. His small hand is cool and sure. He clicks through menus I didn't know existed, pulls up the detailed logs with a series of moves that look like they were taught by muscle memory instead of YouTube. He toggles to email and types Craig's name into the search bar, then pauses and looks at me. I give the smallest nod I have. Filters bloom. He scans. His eyes move like he's counting beats in his head. Same password? He asks, almost to himself. He tries one. It fails. He tries another. It takes. The inbox opens with a hungry brightness of a trap sprung. He doesn't smile. He doesn't make a sound. He starts building a line, date to transfer to message to signature. He's been moving it for weeks. Eli says, not accusing, just delivering the weather report. Not all at once. like he thought no one would notice a slow leak. I swallow against the dryness in my mouth. I should have noticed. He shakes his head, the ghost of my wife's patience on his face. You were trusting your son, he says, like that's a reasonable alibi. He opens a blank document and begins listing transaction IDs, cross-referencing with the bank's log, copying each into a neat column. We'll freeze what we can. We'll flag the rest. But I need the statements. You have them, I say, and the words feel like handing him a set of keys. He doesn't treat them like a toy. He treats them like a promise. Eli slides into my chair like a substitute pilot, and the laptop becomes a cockpit. He moves without hurry, the way he ties his shoes, 2 loops, cross, pull, like he's been practicing for a moment he hoped would never come. He's careless, he says softly, almost apologizing for the fact. He taps the profile icon and brings up Craig's browser. The thing has more tabs than shingles on our roof, half of them sleeping, the rest whispering. Saved passwords bloom in a neat little vault I didn't know existed. He clicks to reveal one and shakes his head. Same root word, different numbers, he murmurs. He thinks the year makes it clever. He opens settings, and I watch our history laid out like a road we didn't know we were on. Autofill shows our address, the old house phone, Craig's preferred motel chain, a string of card numbers ending in digits I recognize from statements I wish I didn't. Login cookies line up like footprints through wet cement. See? Eli traces the list with his fingertip. He signs in once and lets the browser remember. It remembers everything. He drags open a side panel I swear wasn't there yesterday. Devices. Last sync. IP addresses. The names are stupid. Craig's Mac, phone, work laptop. And I feel a hot, parental shame that we never taught him to be wary of names that give themselves away. Eli copies a fingerprint string the way you'd copy a serial number off a stolen bike. These tie the sessions together, he explains, not showing off, just translating. Even if he switches tabs or accounts, it's still him. The shared cloud drive is the part that makes me sit down. Craig invited me to it years ago for vacation photos, and I never looked again. Eli clicks, and the folders open like drawers in a kitchen nobody cleaned before moving out. There are PDFs named Bridge_loan, Agreement, Rentap_final. There's a spreadsheet with a tab called Targets, and the blood drains from my face so fast the room leans. Eli doesn't linger. He pulls copies into a new folder he names with today's date and the word Evidence, then sets permissions I don't understand to keep them from disappearing. He checks Craig's email, then the backup address he used for password resets. The codes all forward to the same inbox because Craig wanted convenience more than safety. Eli lines dates from messages against transfer times until they click into place like a dovetail joint. The picture that forms isn't complicated, it's lazy. A reused password opens a bank. The bank autofills a routing number. The cloud stores the screenshot Craig sent to the woman with a smile that never reached her eyes. Eli drags everything into a timeline so clean a stranger could follow it. He pauses, resting his hands on the keys, and looks at me like a doctor about to read a chart. He didn't cover his tracks, he says. He just hoped we wouldn't look. He opens a new document and writes at the top, Chain of Custody. Then he notes the time, the device, the path to each file, like a boy laying down breadcrumbs for 2 people who lost themselves in their own house. Her name comes to us like a slick business card slid under a door. Sable Torres. It sounds expensive. Eli finds it in a forwarded email Craig thought he'd buried. Can you resend the wire confirmation, babe? With a smiley face that makes my jaw ache. He clicks the signature block and the internet unfurls like a magician's scarf. LinkedIn headshot with studio lighting, a bio about client-centric wealth strategies, a cascade of quotes about empowerment framed in pastel squares. From far away it looks like success. Up close, it smells like varnish on rotten wood. Eli doesn't gawk. He maps. He pulls up her listed employer, an investment firm with a website so glossy you can see yourself in it, and a contact page that routes to a generic inbox. He cross-checks staff rosters against state licensing and finds a vacancy where her credentials should be. If she's registered, she should be here, he says, tapping the regulator's database. He searches the archive of the firm's team page and shows me how her headshot appears, vanishes, reappears with a different job title. She edits her past, he says, almost curious, like he's looking at a magic trick and admiring the misdirection. Aliases stack like playing cards. Sabine S. Reyes. Torres with 2 Z's when she wants to be unfindable, and still herself. The phone numbers multiply too, one with a Los Angeles area code, another with ours, a handful that live in apps and hop between devices. He dials one from my old flip phone on speaker, and we hear a chirp, then a recorded menu offering personalized voicemail greetings. Burner, Eli says, and logs the time. Her social media is a showroom. Beach sunsets, a glass of something expensive catching the light, captions about letting money work for you. In the comments, men with usernames that look like lottery numbers cheer her on, and women ask how they can get started. Eli clicks through the replies and traces them to private messages with calendar links, quick discovery calls, and a PDF titled Bridge Opportunity, Short Term, High Yield. He drags it next to our bank statement and lines up dates the way a carpenter lines up grain. The day Craig pulled 10,000, she posted a photo of a silver bracelet and wrote, "Treat yourself, future, you already did the work." When he digs into corporations, the shine comes off fast. He finds LLCs with addresses that point to mail drops in strip malls, registered agents that exist only long enough to sign and vanish. The same names orbit: a consultancy, a holdings company, a foundation that accepts donations through a payment service and forwards them to accounts that change every quarter. He follows the account handles across platforms, tiny spelling shifts, the same 3-syllable rhythm. She leaves a pattern and thinks it's a brand, he says, and slides her into the timeline like a knife into a sheath. He checks complaint boards and sees the first hairline cracks. Never saw my principal back. Promised paperwork, kept moving the goalposts. One man writes in block caps that she cost him his ranch. Another woman says she was embarrassed to tell her kids. Eli copies their initials, their dates, the amounts, and makes a new tab labeled victims. He pauses only once, at a photo of Sable standing with her arm around an older woman at a charity brunch, both smiling like they ate the sun. He looks at me then, and I can tell he's remembering my wife's hands counting out grocery money, the envelope system she swore by, the way we built trust into a habit. People want to believe, I say, because it hurts less than saying men like my son are easy to steer. Eli nods. He circles Sable's number on the whiteboard he's turned my dining room into, and draws a line to Craig's. The line is so straight it makes me dizzy. She sells permission, he says, and underlines the word. He bought it with our money. We lay the papers out like lumber, edge to edge, and the story tells itself. Eli draws a straight line down the center of the dining table with a strip of blue painter's tape and writes dates along it with my carpenter's pencil. On the left go the bank statements and card histories. On the right, their mirrors, the messages where Sable strokes Craig's pride just enough to make him think the idea was his. The pattern is as neat as a dovetail. 10,000 out on a Tuesday morning, a text 15 minutes later. Babe, you're a lifesaver. Short-term bridge, huge upside. 5,000 from the card the following week, an email stamped 2:11 a.m. You're the only one I trust to move fast. There's a digital form for my HELOC, the kind the bank swears makes life easier. I remember signing the original in a branch that smelled like printers and carpet glue, my wife squeezing my hand under the desk. The file we print now shows a signature that looks like mine if I'd signed while riding in the back of a truck. E-sign, Eli says quietly. He let the system auto-populate your consent. The confirmation email is addressed to me, but forwarded to Craig's backup account within seconds. The subject line is cheerful. Congrats on your increased flexibility. I stare at it until the words blur. Cash advances stack like shims under a sagging beam. $2,000 here, $1,800 there, always just under a threshold that would trigger a phone call at a decent hour. In the accompanying messages, Sable is a metronome of reassurance. Only until the angel round closes. Paperwork is with legal. You're such a pro. I can breathe again. When Craig hesitates, she pivots to romance, to a photo of her bare feet at the end of a hotel bed, toenails painted the same red as the negative numbers. Can't wait until we don't have to ask permission, she writes. He replies with a heart and a screenshot of a balance sliding towards zero. Eli doesn't flinch. He prints the email headers and circles the routing through 2 mail servers and a VPN exit that can't hide the time zone or the misspelling Sable always makes when she's typing fast. He highlights the identical phrasing she uses with 3 different men on a complaint board and pastes them side by side with Craig's thread. Templates, he murmurs, like a shop teacher spotting a jig in a pile of offcuts. The worst moment is small. A $413 charge at midnight to a rideshare company I've never used, followed by a $600 cash withdrawal at an ATM 2 towns over. The text that matches is 4 words long. You're my hero, see? The letter she chooses for him is not the one we gave him. Eli writes, rename, in the margin and keeps going. By dusk the tape line is crowded and brutal. Every dollar has a shadow. Every shadow has a whisper telling Craig he is brave, necessary, almost there. I don't need a detective to tell me what I'm looking at. It's not just theft, it's grooming. Sable sells him a future where he's finally the man in the story, and my son pays for his starring role with the only thing he thinks he can control, our money. I look at the final column, the one labeled Helic, and rub my thumb over the pencil smudge on my skin. It's a frame, I say, more to my wife's memory than to the room. Eli nods, clicks save on the folder he named with the case number the bank gave us, and says, now we make it collapse. Eli takes the captain's chair without asking, and I don't correct him. He opens a notebook with grid paper and writes at the top in square, patient letters, plan. No flourishes, no underlines. He starts with the banks, calls the fraud numbers, holds through the staircase of menus, and when a human finally answers, he introduces himself in a voice that makes him sound older without pretending. I'm calling on behalf of my grandfather. We need to place fraud alerts, freeze external transfers, and block new payees. He puts the phone on speaker so I can hear, nudges the laptop toward me when a rep asks for verification, and taps where I should click. When they request a case description, he doesn't tell a story. He reads facts. Dates. Amounts. The Helic sign that isn't mine. I hear the change in the rep's tone when she realizes she's not fielding a tantrum. She's receiving a report. Between calls, he submits identity theft reports, like he's checking off parts on an order. Credit bureaus first, then the government portal. He stills me with a look when I reach for my wallet. We'll pull your credit afterward to confirm the freeze took, he says, and I realize he's learned to plan for the thing that fails 2 steps down the line. He writes confirmation numbers in the margin and boxes them, then slides the page to me to initial like we're closing on a house. The part that tilts the room is the tracing. He opens a blank spreadsheet and a map, then draws a line from the bank's routing number to a receiving account, then to another, each hop labeled like a county line. These are mules, he explains, and I don't ask how he knows. He copies every handle Sable uses into a single column and runs them through a search that returns breadcrumbs, payment processor IDs, marketplace seller names that sleep in old caches, a charity page archived just long enough to catch a wire. He spins up what he calls trace routes, not the technical kind that draws green letters on a black screen, but a human one that tells an investigator where to look and what to ask for. We can't compel anything, he says steady, but if we hand them a map, they'll walk it. He drafts letters next, formal as court filings. One to the bank's fraud team summarizing the chain of custody he's built, with links to timestamps and headers preserved. One to Sable's employer's compliance department, neutral and sharp. One to the state regulator with a subject line that includes the words pattern and public risk. He prints them on my old laser printer that coughs before it starts, slides them into envelopes with hands that don't smudge. We'll send certified, he says, and I don't argue about the cost. When he pauses, he looks at me not for permission but for alignment. You'll get calls, he says. You'll want to explain. Don't. Just answer what they ask and say the rest is in the packet. He doesn't fill the silence with comfort or ask if I'm okay. He trusts me to be his weight on the other end of the rope. I reach across the table and lay my hand over the notebook. The grid is crowded with our next days. Freezes, alerts, copies, logs. You're leading, I tell him. It isn't surrender, it's recognition. He nods once, not proud, just ready, and picks up the phone again. The net is already knotted. Now we pull. The house gets quiet in that way it only does when the printer cools and the coffee's gone. Eli is labeling a thumb drive with a strip of masking tape and my block letters when I tell him to sit a minute. He looks up, worried like I'm about to change the plan. I'm not. I point to the chair and he takes it, hands folded, patient. I don't know where to start, so I start with the smallest thing I can remember that still feels like a true beginning: quarters. Your grandma used to keep them in an old peanut jar under the sink, I say. Laundry first, then whatever was left went in an envelope. She'd write its job on the front: groceries, heat, car. If something broke, we'd rename an envelope for a month. We still ate, we just ate a different kind. Eli nods, not bored, not hurrying me. It wasn't a windfall, I go on. No stocks that took off. I did side jobs after hours, sharpened mower blades on Saturday mornings for cash. She tutored kids from church for $20 a session and a casserole. When we hit 1,000, she made a pie. When we hit 10,000, we bought ourselves a new coffee pot because the old one coughed like a smoker. We celebrated small, because small was what we had. He's watching my face like he's aligning a cut. I take off my glasses and rub the bridge of my nose where they've carved a groove. The nest egg wasn't money to me, I say. It was Saturday nights we didn't go out so we could pay Tuesday's bill without sweating. It was your grandma clipping coupons until the margins of the flyer looked like lace. It was the way she'd put $5 in savings no matter what because the habit is worth more than the number, she'd say. I tell him how we missed one mortgage payment the year your dad was born because the transmission blew, and how we never missed another after that, out of pride and out of fear. I tell him we argued once about whether to take a vacation when we hit 50,000. She wanted a lake. I wanted a new roof. We bought shingles and ate sandwiches on the tailgate and laughed like fools in the sun. She joked the roof was our view, I say, and it sounds too soft for what it cost us, but it's true. The grief comes up then, quick and hot, like touching a tool that's been in the sun. I swallow it and let a little show. That money was her hours, I tell Eli. Her patience. Her nose so we could have a yes later. Your father didn't just take numbers off a screen. He spent your grandma's time. Eli's jaw tightens, a small movement like he's clamping a workpiece so it won't jump. He doesn't promise me anything. He doesn't need to. The resolve is already in the room, in the neat stacks he's built, in the way he's turned my dining table into a bench and a blueprint. This doesn't end with me as a victim, I say, and my voice is steady enough to hang a door by. We're not people this happens to. We're people who fix things. He slides the labeled drive across the table. I take it like it's a baton and feel something shift back into place inside my chest. Click, set, true. It starts with a soft chime, the kind a phone makes when it wants to be polite about bad news. Eli has 3 dashboards open and a 4th in a half-size window, his fingers steady on the keys. He's filed the alerts, stacked them like sandbags, bank, broker, bureaus. Now we wait. Waiting has never felt like work before. Today it does. The second chime is different, longer, insistent. The credit union. I hit speaker and give my name. A woman introduces herself with the careful cadence of someone trained to walk people off ledges. We're calling to confirm unusual activity on an account ending in. She reads the digits that match the card I co-signed for Craig when he swore he was finished with overdraft fees. My spine goes cold and straight. Eli is already sliding a sheet toward me. Case number, dates, the 3 transactions we expect her to mention. I read them back like measurements. She goes quiet, then clears her throat. Thank you, sir. I do see fraud alerts placed today. Do you authorize us to lock this account and block all new external transfers? The word authorize catches in my chest. I picture my wife at the kitchen table under the yellow light, writing paid on envelopes in her neat hand. Yes, I say. Lock it. Block everything. Keystrokes patter through the line. Done, the woman says. I'm also seeing a pending cash advance from a location 2 towns over. Would you like that reversed and the card deactivated? I close my eyes and see a midnight ATM screen, a hoodie, a jaw set like it never learned to unclench. Yes, I say. Deactivate. Eli pins a checkmark beside each action, as if he's keeping score at a little league game where the rules finally favor defense. He mouths, "Ask about new payees." "I do." The woman reads a name that doesn't belong to anyone we know, and an alias we've already tied to Sable's paper castle. "Remove them," I say, and my voice sounds like a tool that fits exactly. By the time we hang up, the account is a sealed room. Eli leans back just enough to crack his neck, and then taps a key that refreshes the other screens. One by one, a row of red badges appear. Transfers declined. External link attempts failed. Login challenge triggered. Somewhere out there, my son's phone is lighting up with the kind of errors you can't swipe away. It isn't victory. Not yet. But the current shifts a degree in our favor, and the house feels less like a target and more like a workshop again. The radiators tick. The printer warms and coughs out the confirmation letter with our case number on top like an address we can finally claim. Eli doesn't smile. He just underlines the word locked in his notebook and writes the time beside it the way a carpenter marks the first true cut of a build. When the next call comes, a fraud department from a bank Craig opened last week, Eli slides me a fresh sheet already labeled with what matters. I answer, and this time there's no tremor in my hands. The tide isn't roaring yet, but I can feel it nudge my boots. We're not drowning. We're standing. The envelope feels heavier than paper. Eli has addressed it to a compliance officer whose name he pulled from a filing only auditors read, and sealed it with tape he smoothed twice to make sure it bites. He prints the tracking label, logs the number, and tucks the receipt into a folder that's getting thick enough to sit on. "Courier will pick up in 10, he says, not bragging, just moving the next piece across the board. While we wait, he runs through the packet again like a pilot with a checklist. Screenshots with full headers. Statements with the metadata preserved. A summary page that reads like a weather report instead of a scream. The names are scrubbed to initials and case numbers. Dates and amounts are left whole because truth doesn't need decoration. He has a section labeled chain of custody where he notes when and how each file was captured, by which device, from which path. I sign where he's left a line for me, my name squared against the margin like a joist against a sill. The courier's knock is brisk and patient. I hand over the envelope and feel, for a second, the way I did the day we sent our mortgage payoff, lighter, and not sure the lightness is allowed. Eli watches the driver scan the barcode and waits until the door closes to write the timestamp in his notebook. He doesn't smile or throw a fist in the air. He checks the synced upload of the digital copy and compares hashes like a kid comparing fingerprints, then nods once. The calm in him is a different weather than the storm I carry around in my ribs. I make coffee because there's nothing else my hands can do that won't mess with his rhythm. The pot gurgles and steams, and the kitchen fills with the smell my wife called her permission slip to keep going. I pour 2 mugs and set one by Eli's elbow. He thanks me without looking up, eyes moving over a screen where he's lined Sable's posts against our timeline. The cracks are there if you know how to listen. A photo at a client lunch timestamped exactly when a wire went out. A wheels up selfie the morning after a cash advance. A post about closing 6 figures in 30 days. On the same day, 3 complaints on a small forum say their principal never returned. He checks timestamps the way I used to check measurements, twice, then once more because it's the 3rd time that saves you. He cross-references the courier tracking with the email he sent to the compliance inbox, and the certified letter receipt he'll drop at the post office after lunch. He has already drafted an addendum in case they try to claim we prejudiced an investigation by sending it 2 ways. He's 12 years old, and he's anticipating other people's excuses with the patience of a man who's sanded a board dead flat. I stand there with my mug and realize I'm no longer the steadiest person in the house. It doesn't shame me. It steels me. The calm beside me isn't the quiet of someone who doesn't understand the stakes. It's the quiet of someone who does, and keeps his hands precise anyway. Somewhere, the envelope is riding across town toward a desk where a smiling headshot hangs in a frame. The smile will hold for a while. Then someone will break the seal, read the packet, and feel what I feel now. A shift underfoot, a hairline fracture traveling fast. Eli writes the time the courier departed and underlines it. "Clock starts now," he says, and returns to the work. The first ring is a mosquito in my ear. By the third, I know it's him. I let it go to voicemail because I want the distance a recorded message gives a man, but the phone starts again before the red light settles. I answer and Craig's voice hits me in jagged pieces. Cards declined. Landlord. Suddenly uncomfortable. Some crazy stalker reading his private life back to him. He is breathing like he ran uphill carrying a lie that finally got too heavy. Dad, you have to help me. Someone's after me and Sable. They know things. They sent her boss a file that. He trips over the word file like it's a hole he didn't see in daylight. Eli looks up from the table, his pencil hovering over the margin of a list I can't keep up with. He doesn't move closer. He doesn't need to. He can hear the shape of this call from across the room. What do you need? I ask, because a question opens a mouth better than an accusation. Cash. Just until we sort this out. He throws in a word he thinks will soften me. Temporary. It hasn't been temporary so far, I say, and the quiet stretches. I can hear a TV somewhere on his end, the hiss of an old motel AC, or the kind that came with the room and stains the curtains. A door slams in the background, and Craig flinches audibly. They're everywhere, he says, voice lower, like secrets can make phones deaf. The landlord in Jacksonville got an email with my whole history attached. Who does that? Who spends that much time trying to ruin someone? Eli writes 3 words on his pad and turns it so I can see. Keep him talking. I keep him talking. What did the email say? I asked. That I'm a risk. That Sable's under an investigation. They had dates and bank stuff and, Dad, how do they get bank stuff? He's close to crying or yelling and can't decide which will get him what he wants faster. Maybe they asked the right people the right questions, I say. Maybe the right people finally looked. He lets out a breath that sounds like a laugh trying to save face. You don't get it. This isn't about money anymore. This is personal. Someone's making it personal. It got personal when you took what wasn't yours, I say, and Eli's pencil stops. We stand at the edge of the same cliff, and I can feel him beside me, small and solid, refusing to let the house slide. Dad, please. The word comes out flat, unpracticed. I can fix it if I just get past this week. How are you going to fix the part where 17 people can't make rent because their advisor wanted a new car? I asked. The silence goes taut. He doesn't ask how I know the number. He knows I know. On the counter, Eli's phone buzzes once. One of the alerts he set to vibrate so only he would hear. He writes a time and a motel name on the edge of his page without lifting his eyes, and slides it toward me. I read it upside down and keep my voice even. You should talk to the police, Craig. Oh, now you're calling the cops on your own son? He's grasping, hurling hooks into the water to see if one catches on guilt. I'm calling this what it is, I say. Consequences. A knock sounds on his end, firm, official. His breath stutters. Dad, answer the door, I say. My hand is steady on the phone, and Eli is steady across from me, the calmest person in the house. The latch clicks through the line, voices flood in, measured, practiced. My son tries to bargain with inevitability, and I feel the floor stop tilting. When the call dies, the room is dusk blue, and the coffee has gone cold. Eli caps his pen, meets my eyes, and doesn't say I told you so. He says nothing at all, which is how victory sounds when you win by keeping your footing. Outside, the streetlights blink on one by one, and for the first time in weeks I can hear our house breathe. The news doesn't break with sirens. It arrives in clipped sentences, and the shuffle of forms across desks. Eli's inbox pings with a reply from the compliance officer. Thank you for your detailed submission. We have escalated. Then, 20 minutes later, a curt update from the regulator that reads like a weather alert. Action initiated, pending coordination with local law enforcement. Eli notes the times, underlines them, and sets his pen down. We don't celebrate. We wait. Sable goes first. We know because the small business blog she courts for press posts a photo of a police cruiser outside her office, with a caption they'll later edit to sound less gleeful. The phone rings. A detective with a tired voice confirms receipt of our packet, and asks 2 questions only someone who read every line would know to ask. Eli answers clearly, citing the chain of custody page he wrote in pencil and typed clean. When the call ends, He exhales like a man who has been holding a plank, shaking but steady. Craig is not at an office with glass walls. He's at a roadside motel with a door that sticks. I hear the knock through the phone. He doesn't mean to leave open. Firm, not aggressive. He swears, then tries to laugh, then opens the door. The voice that comes next has the flat cadence of 100 repetitions. His name, the agency, the charges. Identity theft. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Each word lands like a nail-driven flush. I can picture the scene without wanting to. Room air that smells like old Freon. A TV stuck at a too bright angle. The suitcase that started this rolling sitting open on a bedspread pattern to hide stains. They read him his rights and he answers too fast, then not at all. A cough of handcuffs, the metallic, unpretending click. I feel it in my wrists even though I'm sitting at my own table with a mug gone cold. Sorrow arrives in a familiar suit, shoulders I've leaned on in better years. Relief stands beside it, and doesn't apologize for being there. I raised a boy who loved dinosaurs and jelly sandwiches, who fell asleep in the cab of my truck on long drives and drooled on my flannel. That boy is gone for now, hidden behind a man who thought he could outrun math and the truth. Both men are mine. That hurts more than the numbers ever did. Eli doesn't gloat. He watches me instead, like a carpenter checking if the beam he's sistered will hold. He slides a paper across the table, our list of victims, the initials notched in a column, and taps the next steps. Restitution requests. Notices to lenders. Calls we promised to make on behalf of people who still think their losses were bad luck. The house is quiet except for the radiator's tick and the printer warming for another round of confirmations. Outside, the street is the same as it was yesterday. Trash cans at the curb, a kid's bike tipped on its side. Inside, something fundamental has shifted. The hammer has come down, and the echo it leaves is in triumph. It's a steadier kind of sound, work beginning where running ends. The first envelope is thin and official, the kind that used to mean jury duty. Inside is a letter stamped with a seal, and a number that has become our new address. Partial restitution, it says, and a figure that wouldn't buy back a summer but buys us a month without waking at 3 a.m. to count bills in the dark. I set the check on the table like a fragile thing. Eli doesn't touch it. He writes the amount in a column labeled in, and the source in a column labeled from, then draws a neat line under both as if to say, more will follow. It does in drips. A notice that a wire was clawed back before it cleared a mule account. A brokerage statement revised to reflect a transfer reversed. Pending investigation. A bank manager calling to confirm a fraudulent loan has been unwound. The lien on my house released with a keystroke I ask her to read out loud so I can believe it. Each time, Eli adds a row to the ledger. Date, amount, origin, action needed. He color codes nothing, just clean, black ink, the same every time, so we don't mistake formatting for progress. He builds a second sheet he calls recovery tasks. Not romantic, not triumphant. Phone calls to lenders in order of leverage. Dispute letters queued with their exhibits clipped in back like shims behind a hinge. Credit pulls scheduled for 90 days, then 180, to make sure the freezes hold and the weeds don't grow back. Every box has a square beside it. Every square waits for a checkmark that means someone on the other end did a job they should have done without being asked. We're not the only ones he's tracking. The victim's tab fills with initials and small notes. Mrs. M, intimidated by paperwork, prefers phone, RH. Proud, won't say he's scared. Send template with bigger type. He drafts a checklist titled If This Happens to You. Step 1, breathe. Step 2, don't explain, document. Step 3, who to call and in what order, because order is how you keep from drowning. He doesn't publish it. He prints it and hands it, one kitchen table at a time, to people who never thought the dark would pick their door. Money trickles the way a thaw works its way through a roof. Slow at first, then faster if the weather holds. We're not made whole. That isn't how this goes. But the ledger gains weight. The in column starts to look less like mercy and more like arithmetic. I tape the mortgage release to the fridge where school drawings used to go and run my finger over the embossed seal like a man checking a joint that finally sits true. Eli totals the page and reads the number without ceremony. It isn't victory. It's daylight after a long outage, unremarkable unless you live through the dark. I pour us coffee, and he starts a fresh sheet, same headings, same pencil true boxes. Next, he says, and I realize we've learned a new habit worth more than any number. We don't count what's gone anymore. We count what comes back. The new place has thinner walls and better light. Morning comes through the kitchen window without asking permission, catching the steam off our chipped mugs and the pencil shavings in Eli's sharpener like confetti. We traded square footage for air we can breathe and a furnace that doesn't sigh like it's keeping secrets. The first week here, I kept reaching for doors that weren't there and finding handles in new places. Now the routes make sense. Back door to the alley, alley to the shop, shop to home by dinner. I teach 2 afternoons a week at the high school. Shop, the old smell of oil and pine riding the dust like a familiar song. Teenagers arrive with thumbs tough from glass and no idea how to read grain. I put chisels in hands and say the same thing my teacher said to me, let the tool do the work. I watch a boy who thinks he's only ever broken things fit a tenon he cut himself and stand taller without knowing why. I come home with sawdust in the cuff of my jeans and a piece that feels earned, not borrowed. Eli sits at the folding table by the front window with the neat patience of a clockmaker. Neighbors come by with laptops under their arms and fear in their pockets, and he shows them how to make a password into a sentence and a sentence into a gate. He doesn't sell certainty. He teaches a habit. Click slow, he tells Mrs. Alvarez, tapping a screen with the side of his pencil. If they rush you, that's your cue to stop. She leaves with a list and a backbone and a promise to bake cookies. He files a note in his ledger under her initials and adds a checkmark to the column that only he can see. On Saturdays, we walk to the hardware store together. He asks about blades and bearings. I answer and make room for the answers he has that I don't. We carry our haul back down the block like we're moving into our own lives on purpose. At night we eat simple, eggs, beans, toast, and argue over whether the router table needs replacing or just a shim. When the mail brings envelopes with seals and the word payment typed without apology, we set them in the same wooden tray my wife used for holiday cards. We don't cheer. We note. We keep going. I used to think inheritance meant clean numbers and a notarized envelope, a ledger balanced at the end of a run. I wanted to hand Eli a nest egg the way a man hands off a relay baton. Sure, smooth, fast through the exchange. Life had other plans. The money that mattered turned out to be the kind you store in your ribs. He found his own storehouse the hard way, and, God help me, I'm proud enough to feel it in my teeth. Sometimes, late, I catch him looking at a photo of his grandmother I keep on the bookshelf, her smile small and undefeated. He doesn't say he misses her. He shows it by tightening a plan, by labeling a folder, by walking Mrs. Alvarez home after dusk, because the alley feels longer when the wind comes up. I thought I would leave him dollars. What he took from this house is steadiness and the knowledge that justice isn't a stranger. It's a thing your own hands can make if you keep them true.